Argh, not another podcast about book publishing, hosted by William May, in which the author finds himself embroiled in a podcast about book publishing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Argh, not another podcast about book publishing.
Hi, all. We're here again with William May, and we have a guest, Shahid Mahmud, correct?
Mahmud.
Yeah, we're sharing real quick because they started, there's a picture of Winnie-the-Pooh behind Shahid.
Yes.
Megan just had an amazing conversation about Winnie, which they're going to pick up on, so go for it, guys.
So I was just telling Shahid that I grew up reading Winnie-the-Pooh and am a big fan of a lot of the poetry that Milne wrote that sort of is around Winnie-the-Pooh. And it turns out he didn't know this, and maybe some of our listeners don't, but if you're ever in New York and you go to the New York Public Library, the main branch with the lions out front, they actually have a children's room, that has a display with the original doll that belonged to Christopher Robin that was the inspiration for those stories. And I'm curious to hear your background with Winnie-the-Pooh. You said...
Well, I actually discovered Winnie-the-Pooh fairly later on in life. After I'd come to... I'd kind of seen it, but really, I really started appreciating Winnie-the-Pooh's philosophy on life as I got older. And it just made me think, my God, if we all just kind of had the same philosophy, how much easier life would be. And then, of course, I have 3 kids, and they all loved Winnie-the-Pooh, the Disney version, but that's fine. No, it's all Winnie-the-Pooh. But yeah, so and then of course I heard about the Tower of Pooh, and I read that, and I said, oh, this is so cool, yeah. And there is a philosophy behind the way he lives, which I think is kind of very interesting.
Yeah, I actually read that book as well, The Tower of Pooh. Yeah. I read it in Bulgarian. It's a great book. It is a philosophy, and
it's Benjamin Hoff, isn't that it?
Yeah.
And
there's another book also called The Pooh Perplex.
I have not read that. Yeah, I have not.
I remember. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's one of those books. It's interesting. Getting to this, I grew up in a house with a lot of books. Yeah. And so there were a lot of books that I grew up reading, and among them were not just the Winnie-the-Pooh books, but also, the books we're talking about. And also, to get to your area, a lot of classic vintage sci-fi and fantasy. I know that that's the area that you're publishing. You own or founded Arc Manor Press, which is it press or publishing?
Well, it's Arc Manor Books, but
okay.
We kind of interchangeably kind of used everything, and being the owner, nobody corrects me. So,
so you've been publishing for the last several years, not just new authors, but a lot of classic authors.
Right. In fact, that's how I got my start. Was I basically approached certain mid-list authors whose books had been out of print. This was around 2006-07, right? And they gave me their books. Now, I think I really lucked out. It's a very small space, actually. These authors know each other, the agents and all that. And I think we did something that they liked. I remember Paul Cook was one of them. Alex E. Pension, who won a Nebula, was one of them, early ones. And kind of, it was more like a referral things when I would go to other authors and first, who the heck are you? Because I had zero background in publishing. My background was finance. But then once you said, well, I publish Alex E. Pension, whose name still carried a fair bit of weight with established authors at the anyway. So, it kind of got interesting, and that's how I started off. And basically, I started approaching people I had read, or estates of people I had read whose books were out of print.
Right.
And again, there's nothing like being at the right spot at the right time. And POD and ebooks were taking off, and I just happened to be one of the early ones to approach them, I think. And so I got the rights, and that's how we started off.
I think, one of the things that's underneath that story, and I'm sure you're aware of this, and it's something that goes back to, Campbell and the early days of the modern sci-fi industry, is just how, first of all, how small a community it really is in both the reality of the writers and also in terms of the readers, and how publishing hasn't always been able to service not just the new fiction, but maintaining the classic works of the genre. I mean, you try to find Theodore Sturgeon.
Yep.
You have to go really look for it, I mean, and that's not a name that should be obscure.
No, absolutely. But I think that's the biggest, advantage of us being where we are with PODs and ebooks and all that the cost of bringing these out has become dramatically less than it used to be,
right?
And I think that's why you're seeing more and more. In a lot of cases, though, it's a rights issue. There have been, I can't remember the book off the top of my head. There's some book I wanted to publish, not that well known, a little obscure, but I thought it really needed to be back in print. I could never figure out who to get the rights from.
Oh wow, yeah,
one of those things. And I'm sure if I just put it up there, nobody would have cared. But we can't really do that.
You don't want to do that.
That's theft, even though
and also you want to make sure you're paying the author or whoever it is that the author left those rights to.
Absolutely. And like I said, that's why to me it's just clear-cut theft. And I know there are some people who've done a few things like that. And to me it's like somebody coming into my house and just taking whatever from my house. It's
no, I mean, as a writer, I totally understand and respect that, because we're living in an era when it's very easy for people to take what you've written in one way or another, and any kind of artist right now is at risk of their work, being
absolutely, and it's not just the AI thing that's going on. We once timed how long it would take. I don't know if I'm sure you do. We used to publish Galaxy's Edge magazine.
Okay.
And we ran it for 10 years. Mike Resnick was the editor originally. Okay. He literally did it he died. Till the day he died.
Oh, wow.
He was editing it from his hospital bed. It was like his kind of thing he created for us. Yeah. But we once timed it because we published George R.R. Martin in that, Orson Scott Card, a whole bunch of big names. But it took 3 days for the pirated versions to go online.
Right.
I timed it because first, I was like, what the heck? I got to fight this and all that. And after a while, it's the cost of doing business, because these sites are sitting in Russia or Albania or whatever. They're putting up these sites. I mean, what are you going to do about it? But yeah, it is a huge issue. It's a theft of intellectual property rights.
Does it affect the smaller publishers more than the larger publishers, you think, Shahid?
Maybe not. But I'm in a fairly unique place where we are a very small press, but we publish some of the biggest names around. So those tend to get picked up immediately. But a lot of the smaller presses who are publishing newer authors and all that probably won't have to contend with that for that long. Now, having said that, I found out, maybe we worry too much about it, that I think most people are fairly honest, and I know we lose some sales, but we make a good living, that. People are willing to pay for content generally. Most people are honest. I do believe that.
I mean, I also think that you're lucky in terms of the kind of work that you're involved with, that you do have a really strong community aspect that I think extends between the writers and the readers, which we've touched on, that feeling of sort of, because, first of all, I think part of it is the fact that until fairly recently, this was all kind of, and when you get into the nitty gritty of the kind of sci-fi we're talking about, still is largely a kind of geek subculture.
Yes.
And a lot of these, were kids. I mean, I know growing up when I was a kid that like reading, Heinlein, like you were like, oh, what's the matter with you, kid? Like you're reading about like space adventure or whatever. And it's like, also like, deep in all of these books is such like profound philosophical consideration.
Yes, absolutely. And like, I mean, just think of where you were and think of me in Pakistan. I grew up, I went through high school in Pakistan reading Heinlein with a bunch of people sitting there. What the heck are you reading?
Right.
But it really made me think. Like, I grew up in a fairly religious society. Pakistan's a pretty religious country. Fortunately, my family was fairly liberal. My father had served in the Royal Air Force. He was a World War II vet, the old days. So different perspective on things. But reading something like, for example, The Gods Themselves from Asimov, where the whole concept of what a god is, it's something you don't discuss in religious communities. I remember reading Dune and being fascinated because it borrows a lot from Arab tradition and Islamic thing, which was very rare out there. But it also made me think about things, in my own community, about my own religious beliefs and things like that. And I think that, from way back, it's the philosophy and the ideas that really have made this whole genre so great.
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember reading a lot of the later Heinlein books when he sort of had gotten over the war rah-rah period of his career. And, the original full manuscript of Stranger in a Strange Land is such a like profound book. Yeah. And, there are so many books in that I can remember. I mean, that it's like, Zelazny was another one who like the books that he was publishing were about like very deep questions, not just, and you talk about Dune, and it's also like, what kind of future do you want the human race to have is the most pressing question in that book. Yeah.
Yeah. And go ahead. Sorry.
No, please.
No, I was just going to say, in Dune, and the whole aspect about he's writing this book, and as you read the series, it becomes very evident about an anti-hero. He's not even the hero, he's actually responsible for... Like,
okay, he's literally trying to be the worst villain possible so that no one will ever be a villain again.
Yeah,
like, that's literally...
It blew my mind when I realized that.
He's like, I'm willing to do the thing that is so terrible, to destroy everything in order to save humanity's future. And I will be the villain. I don't care. Like, that's how much he cares about saving the world, is that he's willing to be the sacrifice.
Talk about, conceptually just kind of broadening your whatever, like how you think about these things.
I think about it as like almost the inverse. That old phrase that is like, you can accomplish anything as long as you don't care who gets the credit.
Yes.
It's the inverted version of that. It's like,
I guess so. I never thought of it that way. Yes. But
he doesn't care who gets the blame, even if it's him.
He doesn't. He's just out there. And he knows what's going to happen. He has the premonitions.
Well, I mean, like, he knows what's going to happen because he's so smart that he knows, and he has the ability to psychically check whether he's right.
But you're right. He doesn't care. That's what needs to be done. He'll do it.
But let's get a little bit into, I'm curious, like, how did you start reading sci-fi in Pakistan as it were? Because that seems like an interesting...
There are a lot of bad things about colonialism, but there are a few good things as well. And one of the good things personally for me was that a lot of the books published in Britain particularly, not so much as the US, would make their way to Pakistan.
Right. In English or translated?
In English. In my education, for example, I did A-levels. Even though I was in Pakistan, the exams would be sent to England. There's a whole tier system, which is... When I was growing up, more common, as things are getting less common in that respect right now as the separation kind of continues. But but yeah, so we had these books, and I got into science fiction, and this is going to be very common with a lot of you people because of Star Trek.
I mean, again, looking at your background,
yeah, exactly.
Just to explain to the reader, to the listeners, the background here. You want to explain it?
Yeah. What happened in Pakistan, because again, ex-British colony, we would have 2 English programs, either from the US or from Britain, that would be played, one sitcom and one drama every day. And then the rest would be all local language programming. And I was allowed to watch the sitcom, but the drama would come later on during the night. So it was school time for me. I was pretty young, so I wouldn't get to see that. Except my father thought I would love it. So he got special permission from my mother for me to watch Star Trek with him. And he was, for some reason, he loved science fiction himself. So that was my earliest, and I still remember the first episode was the Corn episode.
Right.
That I saw. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? I've never seen anything like this. And I just kind of fell in love with the genre. And that was my introduction. And then, like I said, then of course, you get on, and I was always interested in reading. I read a lot of mostly British children's books, like Enid Blyton and stuff like that. I don't think they're very big here, but they're huge in Britain, or they were. So, I would read that. And then there was just a natural progression because I started liking science fiction to get into science fiction. I didn't read that much younger stuff. I read the Heinlein juveniles, but not knowing they were juveniles, I just read them as Heinlein.
Yeah.
But, you just go that. And in fact, when I was actually in a boarding school in Pakistan, because my father was a diplomat going all over the place. So my high school last few years, I was in a boarding school. And I had made a deal with a local bookstore that because I couldn't go very frequently, they would put aside one copy of every science fiction book for me, because they wouldn't get a huge selection. They'd get a few,
right.
And then I could go in and buy whichever ones I wanted to, because they knew I was going to buy a bunch of them. So that's where all my allowances used to go. And then I would read them. But that's basically it. And comic books, of course. Had to have comic books. We all... So, and with comic books, actually, it's interesting. I was working for a bank in Abu Dhabi. I was doing investments for them. And there were no comic books there. And there are no street addresses. There were no street addresses. So I would have my comic books shipped from the US every 2 weeks to my bank. And everybody was making a lot of fun at me. What the heck is wrong with you? Still reading comic books? Associates comic books with little kids. Until I found out a couple of months later, my comic books were disappearing. People were borrowing them to read them themselves and things like that.
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's also one of those things where it's like there is so much in even the most seemingly banal popular comic books that. I mean, it's, first of all, it is just by structure operatic. I mean,
actually, yes, isn't it?
I mean, in part because that's the only kind of structure that can allow the kind of open form storytelling. And because these characters are so much larger than life in the same way that characters who are constantly singing are larger than life. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They have to contain that, so I feel like, that level of it, inherently gives it a certain, yes, there's a pomposity, but there's also a formality to it in a certain way that lends itself to real important stories and arcs and themes. It's got to be deeply thematic in order to pull that off,
And it's a certain type of pomposity. It's not a very...
Oh, yeah. No, I don't mean that. I mean that in the sense of, it's a story that is blown out in terms of the reality of it. That's...
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
That's what I mean. That there's, not in a sense of it being... it is self-important in that way. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And also in the fact that it has to have that kind of wearing its themes on its sleeve.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever, as a publisher, looked into graphic novels or anything like that?
No, it's just not something we're set up to do. It's a very different market.
Yeah. It's also technologically different, I'm sure, in a lot of ways.
everything and the logistics behind it, the distribution systems, how everything is done is just very different. I suppose one could explore something with digital comics now. I don't know how popular that market is right now. I don't know. I can't imagine reading comic book online.
Sure.
Just have to have that in my head. But anyway, but not something we've actually thought of. Yeah.
No, so I'm curious. You were originally in business.
Yes, I wasn't.
I was curious about that transition, and I mean, I know you talked about how you saw an opportunity in terms of the way that like science fiction was going out, and I'm sure that both appealed to you personally as someone who cared about those books, and also you recognized that was not a bad decision in terms of if there was an actual opportunity there. But I'm curious how you got to that place of thinking about publishing as your future, what your experience was in the finance world.
You're giving me way too much credit. I had no friggin' clue what I was doing. But I started. What happened was, is your typical subcontinental Asian kid coming here, getting a great education, and going into a very lucrative business. You go into investment banking, you go become a banker, lawyer, or something or the other. So I went into finance. Just
to put it in context, this was also in the days when that was like handing someone a black Amex card,
it's like in that industry. Greed was good, if you remember that greed was good. I've traded options, I've traded futures for my banks and things like that. So I was all in there. But it took me a while to figure this out, but I still remember the time, the moment I decided I needed to leave that. I was looking at a clock saying, when can I go home? And I was in San Diego at that time. And I said, you know what? I'm making a ton of money and all that, but if this is where I'm at, I'm eager to just get home and get out this. This is not where I need to be. My kids, I'm probably going to die of a heart attack. And, my kids are going to enjoy all the money, and I got to do something that I want to do myself. So, unfortunately, my wife kind of supported me in that decision because we had 3 kids that had to go through college at that time when I made it. Sure. It was the stupidest thing from a logical point of view. So I cut that and I said, what else can I do? And I said, I've always loved books. Let's see what I can do with books. So I said, I could write books on finance. I'm pretty darn good. I was a senior grader for the CFA program, which is like a 3-year chartered accountancy equivalent of investments and all that. But I said, you know what? Let's see if we can. But I've also always been very interested in the technology side. I have a totally non-technological background, but being a nerdy geek or whatever, I've always been interested in what's going on.
Sure.
And I said, hey, all these new technologies are coming out. Let's see if we can have a go at that. And that's what happened. And again, I don't think it was as much planned as luck. I just happened to make that decision because I want to leave my old business. And I said, create this. And that's just when these technologies were emerging and coming out.
Sure.
And the timing was just perfect. At one point, to learn, because I was setting it all up and I didn't know anything about it, I actually taught myself InDesign, how to typeset. I had all these books on typesetting, how to do covers and all that. And at one point, and to test myself, I was creating books out of public domain stuff. Back then, it was still not that common. And I remember at one point that my public domain, my copy of Jane Eyre, which I had produced, was the #1 copy on Amazon for Jane Eyre. And the checks are coming in. I'm going, wow, why is everybody complaining about publishing? This is a piece of cake. Until reality hit us, a couple of years later. But yeah, that's how I got in. But my real love always, once I got over that, got into it, was science fiction, and that's what I love reading. That's the field I knew. So I basically, like I said, just started getting in touch with some mid-list authors. Then at that point, I was like, hey, your books are out of print. Can you give them to me? And really, it was like one call after the other. Like literally, it was like, who the heck are you? And why should we give you our books? You haven't done anything. But one guy finally got convinced, and that was the start.
Yeah. Well, that's how it always starts, right? You get somebody, and once you can prove that you're actually legitimate, I think for a lot of those writers, especially, you know, if they're not selling anything, there's a level at which it's like, well, like, what really is the harm here? Like, if you let this guy try and it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. I'll tell you why I feel it's incredible real quick. Because you left something that gave you so much security, and then you went to something that you absolutely love doing, and that where you started as a youth, you remembered how that impacted you. And so it's very inspiring to hear, I'm sure, even for our listeners, to hear that you made that decision. But that I love the part that you didn't necessarily plan things. It was more kind of spontaneous, it sounds like, correct?
It was very spontaneous. It's not something I would actually recommend for most people. I really do think I got very lucky.
I mean, it also sounds like you'd already been fairly successful, so you probably had a little bit of, you know, a launch pad, as it were, even if it wasn't enough to...
I did, and in fact, I was very successful. In fact, in San Diego, my last job was at the city of San Diego, and because they don't give out bonuses, they actually named a day in my honor. That, hey, you did such a great job for the city. Here's, I think, November 7, 2005, or something or the other, is like Shahid Mahmud Day in the city of San Diego. But but you know, it's one thing being good at something, but I think we all owe it to ourselves to at least try to do things we love. I'm not a believer that, you know, do what you love and success will come. I've seen a lot of people do that and fail also, but you have to try. I think you need to try. And sometimes success will come, and there's nothing like it. I love my job now. I mean, I mentioned that Mike Resnick was the editor of my magazine, right?
Yes.
When my father passed away, I had gone home to clear up his stuff, and I found a copy of Santiago, one of his books, that I'd read in high school. And I said, if at that point he was editing my magazine, and I said, if I'd gone back to my little self and who reading that book in high school, in the boarding school, he would have thought I'm a total liar. He's making it all up. It's just unreal. So, you know, sometimes and I do think sometimes we get too scared to try some things. Like, if it had not worked out, I mean, I'm not that stupid. I would have gotten a job. And that's the agreement I'd made with my wife. Give me 2 or 3 years. We've got finances to support ourselves. And if it doesn't work out, I will then, you know, we have 3 kids. It's not that I can just, you know, stick my head in the ground and then forget about all that.
Well, I mean, you know, I certainly, you know, as someone who literally is largely a poet and, you know, also, I mean, I also write other stuff, but, but as a person who, you know, like, I went to graduate school for poetry. I certainly didn't, you know, so I didn't, you know, it was not me. And my father actually was in banking, in finance. He wasn't in investment, but he was a back office bank
finance anyway. Yeah,
like he was a VP in the back offices of a bank for many years, and then worked in like sort of a compliance industry related to achievement, if you know what that is, which it's, you know, a whole thing. And this was back in the 90s when it was still a big mess. So, you know, he, to his credit, was very supportive. He was like, he said, in many ways, the same kind of thing that you said, which is like, you know, you have to be able to follow something that you care about and do, you know, and he knew that, like, for me, being a writer was important, and he supported that decision. So.
Absolutely. And I know people who push their kids into things they really don't, where they don't need to go and where they don't want to go. It's so common. And I think you and I lucked out. Like my parents never understood why I did it. And they, you know, before they died, they still thought I was nuts, but they never opposed me. If, you know, they can still think I'm nuts, but say, okay, if that's what you want to do, you want to do. And something I've always told my kids, that you have certain responsibilities. I'm not going to support you forever, but as long as you can meet your responsibilities, do what you want to.
I mean, I think I was important, it's important that I was kind of lucky in that, like, I had a certain talent that was like, that it wasn't like, you know, like, you want to be a poet and you're some, you know, schmo. It's like I went to, you know, school and was supported by people who had like real reputations, saying to my parents, no, like, we believe that he really has the kind of talent that, like, this is worth pursuing. which I think makes a big difference, you know.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure that if you know, the head of Random House had gone to your parents' house and been like, "Hey, you know, this kid, he has a really great idea for how to like take publishing into the future, and we support him," like their feelings about it would be very different. You know what I mean?
Different, yes.
So I mean,
Absolutely.
so there is that, you know. But I am curious, you know, being in publishing today. What are your, you know, I mean, like you're talking about, you know, back when you started in the early 2000s, it was a very different kind of environment, I think. And I mean, even though it seems likely that you still, you know, have a certain edge in terms of like having access to a lot of work that is established that hasn't been serviced by the publishing industry, still gives you, you know, an advantage, I'm sure. There's got to be a lot that's also now more challenging and requires a lot of more innovation on your part as a publisher.
Yes. Things are just moving rapidly, and it's kind of hard to keep up. Fortunately, we are actually very fortunate. We've got a very stable list of writers and all that kind of give us a certain amount of stability. You know, we have like 8 Heinlein titles. So having 8 Heinlein titles, they just sell. I don't need to do anything to them.
I mean,
they stayed happy, they sell.
If I see a Heinlein book I haven't read in a bookstore, I am going to buy it. You know what I mean? Like I have a copy of the Hunt for the Pantera sitting in my like it's sitting there. I just have to get the time to sit down and actually read it. But
that's another story. When everybody asks me, how the heck did you get rights to that? But that's a different story. That's a whole story in itself. I'm actually, the way I look at it, the publishing industry it's an entertainment industry at its core, especially the fiction part of it. And it tends to follow other genres. It's always been a slow mover. If you look at music, if you look at videos and all that. And I think a lot of what might have happened to, like, say, you know, new music producers and all that, to some extent, that flattening is also, you can see it happening here with, you know, with, and it's not just, I think, self-publishing authors who are coming on Amazon, Kindle and all that. I think a lot of even very well-established author, and this is a scary concept, especially for the legacy publishers, are realizing they no longer need to share their profits with them. Look at Brandon Sanderson. And
I was going to say.
I mean, like, if you can get 47 million.
I think that's certainly something that works in some genres. And what scares me about that, as a person who's in poetry, is that part of the bargain we make as a community of writers is that big publishers also support genres and work that isn't necessarily as commercially viable as a form of building like a reputation for themselves. And they can only do that because there's a sort of interconnection of saying, okay, we can make this much profit over here on the popular stuff, and then we can spend, you know, 10% of that to support, you know, really important artsy literature.
That is so true. And that's what the scary part is that I was talking about. For example, I've just signed on 3 or 4 brand new authors. The reason I've been able to take risk on them is I've also signed on Mercedes Lackey's Half-Blood Chronicles, which is already, orders are starting to flow in, you know. Things like that.
No, that's going to sell for the next 20 years at the least,
exactly.
You know.
And it's a book. So I can afford to take that risk. Now, if Misty had said, okay, I don't need a publisher, I can just go directly to the buyers. It really curtails my ability to take that risk. I mean, I'll still take some risk. I have to earn a living, but it really would make me think 3 times about writing that advance to a new writer. Now, our advances aren't as big as, you know, Random House or whatever, but we always do give an advance on these books. So, and I mean, really, you know,
that's a lot more than some publishers can say.
We, like I said, we're in a very unusual position. We're very small. We're actually 2 full-time people. Me and Leslie Robin. We do a lot of freelancers, but we publish Mercedes Lackey. We've got 6 books from Harry Turtledove signed up. We got Heinlein's last book. So, and if somebody asks me how the heck did we get here, I don't know actually. I do know one thing which made a big decision, and that I did do very deliberately. I paid way overpaid for a book from Heinlein, which it was about some take back your government, some small political thing that happened in California's 1920s or 1930s. There's local elections here, and of course nobody wanted to publish it. So I was crazy enough. I said, I'll take it, and wrote them a check for it. But what it did was, even though I lost a lot of money, the tone changed with everyone I would speak to. Like, say, who do you publish? Well, we publish Heinlein. And then immediately anybody in science fiction is...
Well, I mean, I think also that anyone who looks into it, who sees that what Heinlein you published, is going to know that you weren't doing it as a commercial decision you were doing something that was actually a service to anyone who's really interested in Heinlein.
Again, you're giving me too much credit. It was totally profit market. I wanted to get an in with the Heinlein people. That one was... But
I mean, I'm just... In terms of like how someone's going to look at that and think about it, it's not,
But more importantly, there are so many... Because cost of becoming a publisher is very small now. You set up an account with Amazon, you're a publisher, right? You just publish other authors, feed it through KDP. That's all.
Yeah.
So how do you distinguish yourself? Well, you distinguish yourself with the portfolio you represent. And there's nothing that will represent you better than a Heinlein name, because that estate can go to any publisher they want to. So that's where it really helped. And obviously they were happy with what we did. We now have we even got Double Star, his first Hugo winner. And these books are just very lucrative. But it really just gave us a lot of legitimacy and just kind of totally removed us. You're a small press, yes. But, you publish Heinlein and then other authors like that. And I think that was particularly important, more interestingly, more than the authors, the agents. The agents just don't have time a lot of times. And, they get so many requests and all that. And now we are on I'm going to date myself, on the Rolodex, I guess, of a lot of the major science fiction agents, where there's Scoville Gone, Virginia Kidd, Spectrum and all that we won't be their first call for a lot of their big authors, because it will always go, because we can't afford the advance like, Random House would give.
Right, no, you're not one of the big 5. You're not going to...
But in many cases, we are the secondary one. Like Mercedes, like his Half-Blood Chronicles, Tor turned it down because they are all so obsessively focused on romantasy and other, on some of the few things, the genre-driven things.
No, I know. I mean, there's...
Yeah. So I think the second call after that, hey, and they were open, Tor, would you be willing to do this for us? And they did. You have to pay her in advance. It's just respect, whatever. But
I mean, it's Mercedes Lackey. You're not going to publish her books without paying her in advance.
I mean, it's insulting to her. I mean, I got a great deal because of the relationship and all that, but it's a business in the end, And
I mean, honestly, artists deserve to be, I think you agree with me on the idea that artists need to be able to make a living in the, at least until we change how things work in some drastic way. There's no point in laboring on something that without being able to make money from it.
One of the things that pisses me off with some of my other publishers is they're always complaining about paying the authors. I'm saying you're making a living because these authors are giving you the money. Without the authors, we have no business.
Right. I'm
not writing these darn books. I'm paying someone to write these darn books, and I make a profit off them.
I mean, Publisher's House, they make all of their agents, when they go there, they'd say you have to write a novel.
Okay.
And the thing is, they don't care if it's a good novel or a bad novel or anything about it. They're just you have to go through the process of writing a novel, because you will understand how difficult this actually is and how much is actually involved, because it's not a straightforward process.
No, it's not. It's a lot of sweat and tears that goes into each novel.
Oh yeah,
unless you're a freak of nature like Kevin Anderson. He literally. I wanted him to write me a novella, and he said, "When do you want it?" I said, "Oh, how long will it take?" He said, "Oh, give me the weekend." He writes in a cabin in Colorado on the mountaintop. He went there for a weekend, came back with a novella, which won an award.
Okay.
Now this is actually not my own thing. This was told to me by Eric Flint, and who became a very good friend of mine, that Kevin J. Anderson is a freak of nature. Do not expect any other author to act like that.
I mean, it's not a straightforward process. I mean,
no, it's not.
And, I mean, look, I know that, what's his name? Harlan Ellison used to be very similar. I think he used to, literally, he would do this thing of, instead of doing readings, because, he wouldn't do a reading, because why would he want to talk to the public? It's Harlan Ellison, and I don't think the public appreciated him talking to them if they actually got the chance. I've seen him in interviews and things, and it never goes well for the interviewer. I mean, he used to do this thing where he would go to the bookstore with his typewriter, and he'd sit in the window writing stories, and he'd have a little dish. And if you bought a certain number you spent a certain amount of money in the bookstore, you were allowed to write an idea down for a story and put it in the dish. And he would just reach down and grab the next idea out of the dish, these ideas that people were just giving him.
Yeah.
And write the story.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of respect for these people, but it's a very, very small minority of writers who can.
Oh, no. I'm at this point, I've written poetry for long enough that, I know as a poet, I couldn't do it with fiction, but if you ask me, write a poem, I can sit down and write a poem. I can't guarantee you that it will be the best poem, but it'll be that 80%, I've been talking about this with, I'm working on a manuscript right now. And so I've been talking about this, 80% of writing something good is kind of pro forma, but that last 20% is where the game really is.
Yeah.
And nailing that down can take a little bit more, but I can write something that is at least at that 80% threshold where you'll look at it and you'll go, there's a poem here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that comes from spending years of forcing myself to sit down and write poetry over and over again.
Yep. Yep. You'll agonize over that 20% then if you have to get that done, despite that. Yeah. And I think a lot of mistake we publishers sometimes make is we look at books as products, but they're really a lot more to the author. They're almost like a baby. I mean, it's their creation. And you got to give it that respect, I think.
I think also that, as a writer, your book is kind of inert until it's in the hands of readers. You know what I mean? It's you've done the work to make this thing, and now, it's just sitting here. And that's, that it's not easy for an author, I don't think, to feel like their work is just sort of not having the opportunity to exist in, a way that is, real. You know what I mean?
I have a quick question about how new artists are promoted through your Arc Manor. What is your concept? What is your strategy? Do you have one, or is it different with each author? A new author, I understand the legend. Yeah.
We actually have a couple of imprints, and I'm very open about that. There are certain books we don't think really we can spend that much on advertising or on promotions because it's expensive. And I will tell them, we'll put your book up. It's not going to go into traditional distribution. And that's largely, we created that imprint was for backlists, where, you just kind of, if the book's out of print, you get it, you put it up there. But there are certain new authors who are eager to get there, and I will often tell them, if you want to get your book in print, we will do that. You'll have to do the publicity for that. But we always pay all the other costs like editing and all that. If that we never ask money from the author. But that, like I said, mostly is for backlist. So that's fine. For the new ones, which is the Kasich SF and Fantasy, we do have a publicist who works with us. We had a social media person who no longer works with us. I'm looking at it, and we found that social media actually works best when it comes from the author themselves. So that's why it never really worked. And you guys have basically been in touch with Lou and Sudano. I think she's our publicist.
Yeah.
So we do have a publicist.
She was
there.
the one. Yeah, she was the one who reached out to us, and she's lovely.
Yeah. So we do have that, and she usually works with the authors. But every now and then she says, "Oh, he's my boss. I've got to keep him happy. So let's see if we can get into it for him." But she's really, her job is not us or the companies, our authors. She works with all of our Kasich authors.
And I'm really happy that Lou found William for the two of you to talk, because it's fascinating, the two of you, like your knowledge and your passion and your determination to make a difference in the publishing world. I have another question. What are your theories on an author doing readings and in-person signings? What do you think about that? And do you support that? Do you help with expenses, or do you feel that makes a difference when an author gets out there to meet readers?
We will support them in digital readings and things like that. We just don't have a budget to arrange for a tour, the traditional tour, and that can be extremely expensive. I've done that once, by the way, and it just didn't pay off. And again, readings and all are good, but they actually, we found, especially in the modern day, have very limited commercial success in terms of, what we can do from other resources.
Is there still support at conferences and things like, I know that it used to be that like even Comic-Con and things like that used to have a certain amount of overlap with like just general sci-fi readership communities and things like that.
Yes, and we actually do promote things like at the World Science Fiction Convention and all that. We actually also sponsor an award with DragonCon. Okay. We are the co-sponsors for the Mike Resnick Award. I was really dedicated. He became like a mentor to me. So
hearing you talk about, like when you said Mike Resnick Award, I was like immediately like, that makes total sense from everything.
Yeah, so it's basically he loved promoting new authors. Oh, this is really cool. When I started creating this magazine, I just wanted some place to advertise my books. Right. And so I went to him and said, "Hey, Mike, everybody understands." He was one of those guys who knew everyone. Get me a cheap editor that I can have this in it. He said, "What do you want to pay?" I said, "I don't know, a couple of $100. He started laughing. He said, "You're nuts, but I'll do it." And I said, "Why?" He said, "I need venues to promote new authors." So the agreement was he would get huge names and their reprints for like $50. I paid $100 for three George R.R. Martin stories.
Wow.
Just because they all love
because they would sell the magazine.
Also, more than that, they like to be able to give back reasonably.
Right.
So my agreement was half the magazine would be unpublished authors. And my agreement with Mike was I don't have to pay him much, but I have to pay the authors pro rates and on time. Because as he pointed out, when he started the business, he had like 50 magazines he could write to. Now there are 3 magazines, and they're all,
You know what I think of? Speaking about, we were talking about Star Trek. That DS9 episode where he fantasizes being a sci-fi writer writing the story.
Back in the time when he goes back in time.
Well, he doesn't go back in time. Literally, it's like he's imagining himself somehow as like a fantasy, a golden era African-American sci-fi writer writing the story
He doesn't
about
actually
Commander
go back,
Sisko.
He imagines
He's imagining himself. And it's like the thing that's really amazing about that episode is how much they captured about that era of golden era, like the magazines and what it was really like. I mean, or at least what I imagine it was like from reading, the authors who were around then talking about it,
Yep. So, yeah. So anyway, so we set this up. Oh, This is a magazine that got us a Hugo, that got us a Nebula, and my editor was charging me $200 issue to put it together, all of it. About six. I did kind of have to raise his price a little bit voluntarily because I was paying my copy editors more than I was paying him, so I can't do that.
No, like, and I mean, once the thing's doing, well, there's a certain amount where you're going like, I need to put a little more into the tank on this.
Yeah. Oh, it never made money though. That's what magazines are such a thing. But it did okay. It gave a lot of prestige. And it gave him his thing. We were able to get some really good new authors, and he really. And
I'm sure that it also, it may not have directly made money, but I'm sure that it also gave your press a certain amount of, your you know what I mean? Your overall enterprise probably profited by having it.
Absolutely. And we ran it for 10 years. I had to kill it because it was just very time consuming, and we are just a very small press, and it really broke my heart, and it still bugs me that I had to, and if I can, I'll probably try to revive it if I get the resources.
Did Mike Resnick pass on the editorship, or did it?
Yeah, to his handpick. It was Leslie Robin who edited that. She did a great job. She actually brought, I think, a more modern flavor to it. She's a younger woman, and all that, but like I said, it's like putting out an anthology every 2 months.
So I'm curious, are there any authors who you feel like mentioning, who you published them when they were really still fairly unknown?
Andrea Stewart. She's doing extremely well. I think we may have published her first works in Galaxy's Edge.
Oh, wow.
Just off the top of my head, I just know her. I remember her because I just chatting with her a few days ago.
Oh, yeah.
That's that. So, and really, when I would go to conventions and all that, when you would have these young, or maybe older, just newer authors just come up, and they would be so delighted to have been published in a magazine, It kind of, it is great if you can make money doing something that is helping other people, making other people feel that way. There's nothing like a feeling like that, really.
Yeah,
I know. Sorry, Janice, what?
It's almost priceless when you can do that.
It really is. It really is. And that's one of the reasons why I regret having, it was a business decision, because I am in my root, because I am an evil Wall Street person. So...
How often did you publish it? Was it annually or biannually?
Every 2 months.
Oh, yeah, you could do it annually, biannually. But I have one more question, and I want to make it general, and you can share what you want to share. As a publisher, is there a greater amount of income coming into you? And is it certain times of the year? Is it seasonal? And is the income coming in from mostly Amazon, mostly mom and pop stores? I'd be curious to know, without going into too much detail, where are you finding income to pay your author?
Our income is not that seasonal, but product based. If we publish a lot of big name authors, so when their books come out, we do see a bigger cash flow coming in. Amazon continues to be the gorilla in the, it is what it is, especially on the ebook side. And one of the big things about the ebook side is because the cost of production is so low. Once you've got the book ready, basically we have a direct account with Amazon. They'll take 30% and we'll get 70%. Unlike, for example, when I have our books are traditionally distributed through consortium, I'll probably get 30 cents on the dollar for the paper version. And out of that 30 cents, then I have to pay printing costs on top of that. So just from a profitability board, just the way the logistics work out, we do get most of our profit from Amazon. Having said that, from a cash flow point of view, I would say about 40% of our cash flow is coming from paper through our traditional distribution as well. But again, that works for us because of the type of authors we publish. If you're publishing Mercedes Lackey, Turtle Dove, stores will want to buy that and carry that book. It's not, if I were just doing a lot of newer authors, I don't think that would be a very successful model. So we do get, and actually that's one of the most difficult things I try to explain to newer authors. we are going to put them into traditional publishing, on the Kazakh side. We are going to do the publicity. I actually, just a few months ago, I had a 2-page spread on Publishers Weekly. We bought 2 whole pages to advertise books. I'm in talks with 3 websites right now to do long-term contracts with them on advertising books. But having said all that, there's so much competition for shelf space now. Right. It is almost impossible to get new authors sometimes into the main bookstores. And it's kind of tough because they come and say, oh, you got traditional publishing, you publish all these authors, I'll publish my book, and they expect to see it in every bookstore in the neighborhood. And I have to explain to them that it may not happen. It may, it depends on the buyer. They may like the book, it's being offered on a traditional basis, so they may put it there. But it may not. And it's just getting more and more difficult to get them inside the stores now.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Anne.
Actually, I was going to ask you a question that is a little bit off topic, but I know Arc Manor is you're located in Baltimore?
In Rockville, Maryland, actually, a little bit south of Baltimore.
Well, no, I'm asking because I'm going to be in Baltimore in March. I don't know if you know AWP. That's the conference this year is going to be in Baltimore, and so I'm curious if you have any recommendations, places that you like in that area that would be worth checking out for an out of towner.
Oh, I'm not that familiar with Baltimore. I'm sorry, but I'm not. But if you're in the neighborhood, drop me a line. Would love to get together with you, and maybe
if I have a chance,
I will, or something.
I would love to do that. I'll have to try to see because I know it's going to be hectic being there. But
I get
it really has been a pleasure getting a chance to talk.
And, it's really good to meet people. That's why I came into this business, to meet people like you and in my tribe rather than the Wall Street side. So it was great. Thank you.
Actually, before we sign off, I'm curious, are there any titles right now that you want to, suggest to our readers, like new books or?
Other than we got, the one I would really love to recommend to writers, it's a well-known author, Harry Turtledove. He's done a turnaround from his alternate history. He's writing paranormal detective noir fantasy. It's brilliantly done. I was reluctant to buy it first because Harry, all your fans want alternate history. We said, I just need to do this. So I said, okay. And it got a rave review from Publishers Weekly. It's, I think, got a 4.6 rating on Amazon.
Talk about following your passion, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's brilliant. It's so damn good. I've got 5 more books I've taken from him. He told me it's the most fun he's ever had writing because it's set in Los Angeles, a city he loves. It's his city. And it's all about that, and he's just having fun. I think he needed a change. So I would the book on that is Twice as Dead is the first one, and the next one is coming out, Lightning Runes, in a couple of months.
That's awesome. Real quick, we started with Winnie-the-Pooh. Do you want to end the conversation with Winnie-the-Pooh? Anything to share?
I would like to just point out, we started with Winnie-the-Pooh, and it took me a minute, but I actually read eventually the quote on there, and so it's also a Star Trek comment.
Yes, it is.
And like you're sitting in front of the Winnie-the-Pooh figure, and now I'm seeing that he's dressed in the in the outfit. I have it in a red shirt outfit, which is particularly funny.
And
Winnie-the-Pooh has a red shirt. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's next generation, so I don't know if they were red shirts then or if it was something else. But
I don't know. It is kind of funny. I saw it's not my own. I didn't send it to me or whatever. Just.
But the quote on it, just for our listeners who might not see it, it's the famous line from Next Generation, Darmak and Jalad at Tanagra, and Piglet. It says that to Pooh, I believe, and then Pooh responds with the famous response, "Shaka, when the walls fell," which is the for anyone who has watched TNG, you'll completely understand.
Yeah, and I love that episode. It's
one of the best episodes of that show. And it's also like, again, it's like an episode that is very like deep in terms of like what it's actually about, like in terms of language and the possibilities of how language could work, and
exactly.
So I mean, just circling back to that center of how sci-fi and speculative fiction and fantasy always feel like they're reaching for something more than just the mundane escapism that they often get accused of.
Yeah. William, do a sign off?
Sure. I just first of all, I just want to thank you. I don't know if there's anything else that you feel like is worth.
We've covered, I think, solved most of the mysteries of the world by now.
Yeah. Mark Twain used to talk about how there were like two guys. There was like some Swami in India, and there was him, and the Swami. Between the two of them, they knew everything. The Swami knew everything that was known, and Mark Twain knew all the rest.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, there you go. Okay, great seeing you guys, and thank you
so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Argh, Not Another Podcast About Book Publishing is produced by Denise Marsa, Maggie Dimitrova, and William May. Please visit WilliamMayWrites.com for social media links, recited poems, and more.